All right, so UFC Fight Night Sandhagen versus Font is coming up. It looks like a really, really good card for a fight night. Considering we're getting these fights for free, I'm really, really excited. They stacked this fight night, in my opinion. But I'm going to go right away with my predictions. Starting off, opening the prelims, we got Ode Osborne versus Asu Almabayev. Not sure if I'm butchering that name or not, but we don't know much about this fighter yet. He's making his UFC debut. The UFC website isn't even giving me any of his stats or letting me know anything about him, but I did take a look at his Tapology, and he does have a pretty impressive record. He's 17-2. One of those losses came to Tagir Ulanbekov, and both of his losses were very early on in his career, within his first like 6 or 7 fights. So he's been on quite the win streak, and he hasn't been facing terrible competition. Like, the competition he faces is weird because he'll go against someone who's 10-1, then go against someone who's 10-2, then randomly fight someone who's 3-2. So it's really weird, like the matchmaking that he's had. But if you look at his record, he's still fought other fighters with decent records in his career, and he seemed to have done pretty good. In terms of Ode Osborne, I find him just average. I don't think he's going to be anything. Like, I don't think he's going to ever be ranked in the flyweight division. I think he'll be one of those guys who's, like, considering the flyweight division is pretty small, I think he'll be one of those guys who's just outside the rankings, but I don't think he'll ever be ranked in the top 15. And Asu Almabayev, considering his record, I know we don't know much about him, which is why it's a bit of a risky prediction, but I will be picking him in this fight. He just, I know I'm basing this solely off of his record, but we really don't know anything else about him. He has 8 wins by submission, so I'll take him to win by submission in the second round. But yeah, this is a bit of a Hail Mary fight. The odds are pretty close, although it doesn't show them here. Ode Osborne's only a slight underdog, but I will be picking the favorite in Asu Almabayev. Moving up the card, Cody Durden versus Jake Hadley. I'm actually pretty excited for this one. Jake Hadley's been a really impressive fighter lately. He has his win by triangle choke and his win by TKO. He's 2-1 in the UFC, and I am going to be picking him to win this fight. The reason being is I just think Jake Hadley is so much more dangerous, and he has so much more finishing potential than Cody Durden. Like, Cody Durden seems to usually win his fights by just out wrestling his opponents, and I'm not saying he just does lay and pray, because he does land decent shots from top. But like I said, he seems to win his fights by just taking them down, doing a bit more damage from the top, and winning a decision. Whereas Jake Hadley is always dangerous. We've seen in his UFC debut against Alon Nascimento, he actually did really good on the ground with him, although he lost the decision. And Alon Nascimento definitely deserved to win. Jake Hadley was still doing some decent work on the ground with him, and he still lasted to decision with arguably one of the best grapplers in the entire flyweight division. So that was definitely impressive. And then he has his win by triangle choke in the fight after. And then in his latest fight against Malcolm Gordon, he scored a TKO very early in the first round by body shot. So, like I said, I don't know how he's going to get it done, whether it's submission or TKO, but I will be picking Jake Hadley to get this done in the second or third round. He's just so much more dangerous. It's the truth. If Cody Durden takes him down, there's the submission threats. If it stays on the feet, Jake Hadley, like I said, has so much more finishing potential. And if anyone's going to find a TKO, I'm definitely putting my money on it being him. So moving up the card, Sean Woodson versus Jesse Butler. Now, Sean Woodson didn't look great in his last fight, but it was a while ago. It was last August at UFC, I don't remember, UFC 278, the last Usman versus Edwards card anyway. His fight ended in a draw, mainly because his opponent was making some really stupid mistakes and making some fouls. But still, Sean Woodson has had some impressive moments in his career. I believe he's 3-1 in the UFC. He has this flying knee knockout win over Terrence McKinney on Dana White's Contender Series. And when we go to the other hand to Jesse Butler, he only has one fight in the UFC, which he lost not even that long ago to Jim Miller by knockout in about 30 to 40 seconds. So I am gonna definitely be going with Sean Woodson. I'm gonna pick him to win by KO in the first round. He's very tall, very lanky, 6'2", fighting at 145 pounds. Who knows? Maybe 145 pounds will suit Jesse Butler better because his fight against Jim Miller was at 155 pounds. But still, I don't see him dealing with the range well of Sean Woodson. And I know we don't have much to go by with Jesse Butler, but he is also a short notice replacement himself. Not too short notice. He had a few weeks to prepare, but still, Sean Woodson was supposed to fight someone else. Sean Woodson's been in training camp, and like I said, very hard to deal with his range. 6'2" at featherweight. Not quite sure about the chin of Jesse Butler, so I'm definitely going to be going with I was about to say Sean Strickland. I am definitely going to be going with Sean Woodson to win this fight by knockout in the first round. Moving up the card, Jeremiah Wells versus Carlston Harris. This fight, I'm actually very 50-50 on. I checked the odds before here. I don't think they're showing it on the UFC website. Oh, they are. Okay, perfect. So Jeremiah Wells is a minus 165 favorite. Carlston Harris at the plus 140. I definitely don't mind these odds. But to be completely honest, this is such a 50-50 fight. Like, I'm going to go with the underdog. Even though it's a slight underdog, I'm going to go with the underdog in Carlston Harris. Like, although he did get knocked out by Shavkat Rakhmonov, he has shown better durability, in my opinion, than Jeremiah Wells, which is weird to say because Jeremiah Wells has never been knocked out in his career, but he has been knocked down quite a few times. Like his last fight against Semmelsberger, he got knocked down 3 or 4 times. He was getting hurt, he was getting wobbled. It was a close fight. But the way that I look at this fight is kind of like Jeremiah Wells has the power advantage and the wrestling advantage, whereas Carlston Harris is a little bit more technical on the feet. He's more long, he's more rangy, and he is better at jiu-jitsu. So if it gets to the ground, Jeremiah Wells will be looking to land more ground and pound, but I think Carlston Harris will be throwing up submission attempts. Like I said, in my opinion, this might be the hardest fight to predict on the entire card, but I'm going to go with Carlston Harris. I think it could go one of two ways. Either Jeremiah Wells shoots a takedown and gets caught in some sort of submission from Carlston Harris, whether Carlston Harris recovers guard and locks up a triangle or an armbar, or Carlston Harris just locks up a guillotine right off the takedown, or Carlston Harris will use his range to keep Jeremiah Wells at bay and then win a decision. So either way, whether it's submission, whether it's decision, I'm going to go with Carlston Harris to take this fight. Very close, though. Moving up the card, Kyler Phillips versus Hayani Barcelos. If this was a few years ago, well, Kyler Phillips is new, but like if Hayani Barcelos was a bit younger is what I should say, this would be a hard fight to predict in my opinion. But at this point in both of their careers, I have to go with Kyler Phillips. Like, I just have to. He's the younger fighter. He is coming off of a long layoff, but like he's young, so he can do that, you know? It's uh it's not the end of the world that he's been taking time off. And Hayani Barcelos, he's taking this fight on short notice. Again, there's a lot of short notice replacements on this card, but they're actually making up for pretty damn good fights. Like, I really like this matchup, but either way, Kyler Phillips, he's the younger, fresher fighter. Hayani Barcelos hasn't looked the best as of late. He had his decision loss to Victor Henry, which was very surprising. Henry was making his UFC debut. Has looked pretty decent since then, though, but still, like, not someone you'd expect Barcelos to lose to. Then he had his decision win over Trevin Jones, but, like, we really don't know how good Trevin Jones is. He doesn't have a great record, and he hasn't been looking great in the UFC. He dropped his fight to Cody Garbrandt recently as well, and he has the win over Mario Bautista, which is very impressive. That was a while ago. But anyway, not to get too off track, after that, Hayani Barcelos lost his last fight. Vicious knockout against Umar Nurmagomedov. That was a while ago. It was in January, I believe, on the first fight night of the entire year, on that Strickland Imavov card. But still, like, Barcelos is old. He has shown that he's slowing down, and Kyler Phillips has only shown that he's getting better. Like, he has a win over Song Yadong, which is crazily impressive. He Has a really close loss to Holly and Paiva, but in my opinion, he won that fight. I mean, I'll have to go back and watch it, of course, because it was a while ago. It was on that Sandhagen Dillashaw card. But since then, I believe his last fight was against Marcelo Rojo. He looked very good in there. Marcelo Rojo did not really land much, and Kyler Phillips ended up winning by a Kimura, I believe, if I remember it correctly. So I'm going to go with Kyler Phillips. I don't think he's going to finish him, but I think it's going to be not overly dominant to where there's 10-8 rounds, but it'll be dominant in the sense like he's going to win every round and it'll be decently clear enough. Like I'll go with Kyler Phillips by a 30-27 unanimous decision. Next fight up, Billy Quarantillo versus Damon Jackson. This is another weirdly hard fight to predict, to be honest. Like, I think if you ask 10 people, 8 or 9 of them would say Billy Q's gonna take this. But if you really look deeper into it, like, it's a pretty close fight. Billy Q and Damon Jackson are both coming off of pretty vicious knockout losses. Billy Q had his loss to Edson Barboza, got knocked out with a knee, and Damon Jackson got knocked out with a pretty slick combo by Dan Ige in the second round. Um, the thing is, though, like Damon Jackson has had much more time to recover from his last loss. Billy Quarantillo, his loss to Edson Barboza, like if I remember it correctly, it was in April, maybe even May. Like it really wasn't that long ago. So, man, like it's a hard fight to predict. Billy Quarantillo is younger, he's fresher. Um, Man, like this might be the hardest fight on the card to predict, to be honest. I'm gonna go with Billy Quarantillo. Like I said, because he's younger and he's fresher, and he seems to put on a really good pace, like you saw in his Alexander Hernandez fight at UFC 282. But it is close. I think he'll find the TKO in round 3. I think he's gonna gas Damon Jackson out. Billy Q is a dog. Like if you're gonna beat him, you have to either outclass him and win by decision, or you have to finish him early on. If it goes later on and you're not outclassing him, Billy Q will probably find a way to end up edging you on the scorecards or end up finding a finish. So with that, I will take Billy Q by either, yeah, I'll say third round TKO. But still, like this is a decently close fight. A lot of people are counting out Damon Jackson here, and it's definitely not something I would do. Like don't be too surprised if Damon Jackson takes this one. Next up, moving on, I believe this is now the main card. Ignacio Bahamondes versus Ludwig Klein. I'm going to go with Ignacio Bahamondes. He just seems better, like in all aspects. Ludwig Klein, in his last fight, he had a draw with Jai Herbert. And after seeing Jai Herbert's last performance not too long ago, a few weeks ago against, who was it, Fares Ziam, like it's not impressive to be going to a draw with him. Jai Herbert really isn't that good in my opinion. Like he'll show glimpses of being good, but then he'll just like one day he'll look like a future contender, one day he won't. Maybe it was Jai Herbert's good day and it was Ludwig Klein's bad day. But still, if you're going to a draw with Jai Herbert, I don't trust you to beat Ignacio Bahamondes, especially since he's been looking good as of late. Ignacio Bahamondes in his last fight at UFC 287, he looked very good against Trey Ogden. He won a decision. And still, like, he has that finishing potential. He was the one. I'm not sure if you've seen that highlight reel spinning wheel kick KO against Roosevelt Roberts, but he was the one who did that. He's also 6'3" at lightweight. Like that's some Jalen Turner and Joel Alvarez type of stuff. Who has the huge height advantage. Huge, well, not huge reach advantage. He actually has a decently short reach for his height, but nonetheless, he has the reach advantage. He has the height advantage. He's probably gonna be the bigger guy. Like if you're 6'3" fighting at lightweight, you're definitely cutting quite a bit of weight. I'm gonna go with Ignacio Bahamondes by decision, 30-27. Next up, Tanner Boser versus Alexa Kamur. I'm gonna go with Tanner Boser. I mean, Alexa Kamur just doesn't really impress me. He's 1-2 in the UFC. He's 6-2 overall. Like he doesn't have a ton of experience in the UFC, let alone in MMA. Like he only has 8 MMA fights. Tanner Boser has more fights in the UFC than this guy does in MMA. And I know Tanner Boser also hasn't looked the greatest as of late, but he has been fighting better competition. Like he lost to Ion Cutelaba. Ion Cutelaba is very inconsistent, kind of like a Michael Johnson. Whether you beat him, whether you lose to him, doesn't really say a ton to me because one day he'll look amazing, like in his fight against Devin Clark, and of course his fight against Ion Cutelaba. Next day he'll look terrible. Tanner Boser lost a very close split decision to Rodrigo Nascimento in the fight before that. But he is moving down to 205 pounds. I know his last fight against Ion Cutelaba was also at 205 pounds, but a lot of people would argue it was an early stoppage. And also, he didn't really get to show what was going on there. Just because he got knocked out, like if he's making the cut again to 205 pounds a second time, I think that means that it wasn't a chin issue. The fact is, he just got caught. But in this fight, I truly believe that he's going to show his new and improved skills. He's going to show how good he is at this new weight class. Like Tanner Bosa is a pretty good fighter. He has the win over Felipe Lins. Very close fight with Andrei Arlovsky. I think he won. Has a win over Owen St. Preux. So there's not much you can really say for Alexa Camor in this fight, in my opinion, to really like make it. How do I explain this? It's not a logical pick to take Alexa Camor in this fight, in my opinion. Tanner Boser, like I said, much more experienced. If he's making the cut again, it clearly wasn't a chin issue in his last fight. He just got caught. He's going to show his new and improved skills. He's the better mixed martial artist. He has the better wins. He's going to take this one, in my opinion, by TKO in the second round. Next fight up, Diego Lopez versus Gavin Tucker. Now, as much as I want to pick Gavin Tucker because he's a Canadian, it's I'm not gonna do it. Like Diego Lopez looked so good in his last fight. He took a short notice fight in his UFC debut against an undefeated ranked fighter in Movsar Evloev, who was causing trouble. Like Movsar Evloev beat Dan Ige in his fight before. Movsar Evloev is a good fighter. And to be completely honest, you can make an argument that Diego Lopez won that fight off of damage and off of submission attempts. I can't remember if he knocked him down, but he did wobble Movsar Evloev in that first round. Plus, he was throwing up arm bars. And then I don't remember if it was the second or third round, but one of those rounds he was throwing up submissions like a madman. Like you could easily argue that that was a win for Diego Lopez in his UFC debut against Movsar Evloev. So he's been the more active fighter, fought UFC 288, that was at, I believe. Gavin Tucker has not been active at all. His last fight was against Dan Ige himself in 2021, which he dropped a decision, I believe. But still, he's coming back after like almost over 2 years of not fighting. Not saying he definitely hasn't been training, but still, he hasn't fought in over 2 years. He's the shorter guy, 5'11" for Diego Lopez to 5'6" for Gavin Tucker. 72.5 inches of reach for Diego Lopez compared to 66 inches of reach for Gavin Tucker. Like, that's a really, really short reach. Diego Lopez, like, he's a tough guy. He's got a chin on him. He's got his submission threats. He looked decent on the feet as well. I'm going to take Diego Lopez by submission in the third round. And I believe he's not going to dominate, but he's going to win those first 2 rounds as well. And then eventually finally find the submission in the third. Next up, Dustin Jacoby versus Kennedy Nzechukwu. I did not know that Kennedy Nzechukwu was ranked number 15. I was about to make this because I really like Kennedy Nzechukwu, one of my favorite light heavyweights. So I was going to make this whole thing like it's his chance to get in the rankings, which I really, really liked for him. But I guess he's already ranked. But either way, I'm still going to pick him. Kennedy Nzechukwu. Dustin Jacoby showed such bad fight IQ in his last fight against Asmat Mirzakhanov. I understand like he was getting rocked in that fight and he got knocked down quite a few times. So like his brain wasn't necessarily there, but still he was hurting Asmat Mirzakhanov in that third round. He was completely gassed. Like, Asmat Mirzakhanov had nothing to offer for him. And what did Dustin Jacoby do? He was hurting him, he's wobbling him, and then he decides to clinch him on the fence for the last 2 minutes of the fight. Like, what are you doing, Jacoby? That's the thing that worries me about Kennedy Nzechukwu is his chin. The thing is, he has decent recovery, so I would have picked him anyway. But with Dustin Jacoby's fight IQ, like, what was he doing there? If he even does find a way to hurt Kennedy Nzechukwu in this fight, he hasn't shown me a reasoning that he'll be able to finish him after. Like, he was hurting Asmat Mirzakhanov in that fight, and he didn't finish him in that third round. If he hurts Kennedy Nzechukwu here, he's shown me no reasoning to believe that he'll finish him after. Kennedy Nzechukwu is dangerous. Sure, he gets hurt, but he gets finishes as well. Like, he has his last fight against Devin Clark, which was also at UFC 288, I believe. He scored a standing guillotine, like a modified guillotine, kind of like we saw with Mayra Bueno Silva against Holly Holm in their fight not too long ago. But yeah, Kennedy Nzechukwu, like, he's just so much more dangerous. He had that flying knee KO in the fight before as well against Ion Cutelaba. He just, like, if Kennedy Nzechukwu hurts Dustin Jacoby, he's going to finish the fight. If Kennedy Nzechukwu locks Dustin Jacoby up in a submission, he's going to finish that submission. But Dustin Jacoby has not shown me reasoning to believe that he would finish the fight if he hurts Kennedy Nzechukwu. Not to mention, Kennedy also has, he's a huge light heavyweight. Like, he's 6'5", and he has a huge reach advantage, 83 inches to 76 inches. Like, he's going to be the much bigger guy. In my opinion, he's the much smarter guy. He has a good recovery, and Dustin Jacoby does not want to finish people, apparently. So, Kenny Nzechukwu, I believe, will hurt Dustin Jacoby. I think he's going to knock him down in the second, and then while he's hurt, he's going to latch up a submission and finish him off in the second. Now, for the co-main event, Jessica Andrade versus Tatiana Suarez. I don't know if they have the odds posted here. They do not, but I did check them on another website before this fight. And Tatiana Suarez is like a minus 400 favorite, which I think is a little crazy. I don't get me wrong, I am picking her in this fight. I think she's an amazing fighter, possibly the next champion at 115 pounds. Like, she's the female American Khabib. But still, like, Andrade can put anyone out with a punch. Let's not get that wrong. In my opinion, the odds should be like minus 250, minus 260. But either way, Tatiana Suarez is going to win anyway. She's 10-0 undefeated. She was coming off of a layoff before, so I know a lot of people were worried how she would look. But in her comeback fight, she scored a guillotine against Montana De La Rosa in the second round. She looked pretty good in that fight. She looked like she was shaking off a little bit of rust, but now that she's got that away, she's going to be the taller fighter here, 4-inch height advantage. She's got the bigger reach. She's got the bigger leg reach. I think on the feet, she'll be able to keep Andrade away with her jab and just with her distance type strikes, because Jessica Andrade throws like really sloppily in a sense. Like, she throws huge overhands. Even with her lead hand, she throws huge overhands. She kind of just rushes in. We saw her pay for it in her last fight where Yan Shunen KO'd her. And I'm not saying Tatiana Suarez is going to KO her, but I believe she'll be able to keep her at distance and then eventually find a takedown. Don't think she'll finish her with a submission, but I believe she's just going to maul her and eventually win a decision. I think there'll be a 10-8 round in the third, to be honest. I'm going to say 30-26 for Tatiana Suarez. But again, with the odds, Andrade isn't a terrible bet because, like, especially if you're just sprinkling on her, she can find a shot, you know? It's definitely not impossible, but the logical pick is definitely to go with Tatiana Suarez. Now for the main event of the evening. This was supposed to be Corey Sandhagen versus Umar Nurmagomedov. I didn't even realize this was at a catch weight, but it doesn't really make a difference anyways, in my opinion. Here's the thing. Rob Font isn't a terrible pick, okay? Like, Rob Font's a great boxer. If he has the right game plan, if he really studies Corey Sandhagen, really puts in the work in, and if it really is his night, Rob Font could get it done with the boxing, maybe mix in a little bit of wrestling as well. You never know. Not to mention, he looked really good against Adrian Yanez in his last fight, and he didn't take too much damage in there either. He was getting tagged a little bit early on, but like he destroyed Adrian Yanez. It was a great fight. Um, but anyway, Corey Sandhagen is the more complete striker. Like Rob Font is definitely the better boxer, but Corey Sandhagen is longer, so who knows? Maybe he'll even outbox him anyway, because he could keep him at range with that jab. Although Rob Font does have one of the best jabs in the UFC, but Corey Sandhagen's more complete. He still has very good boxing, despite Rob Font maybe being a bit better at boxing. Corey Sandhagen, he has knees, he has elbows, he has kicks. He can keep him at range with his teeps. He can throw his crazy spinning wheel kicks if he wants. He can throw his crazy flying knees. He is the taller man, so it won't be too hard to get a flying knee off. And also, this is 5 rounds, which Corey Sandhagen does have a little bit more experience in 5 rounds. It's not like Rob Font is inexperienced in 5 rounds. He's had at least 2 main events, at least. Maybe even 3 or 4. I think it's 2, maybe 3, but still, Corey Sandhagen has had more main events as of late, and he's been looking very good in those fights. He looked great against Song Yadong. He stopped him in the 4th. Looked great against Chito Vera, arguably 50-45, arguably 50-44. Looked very, very good. And yeah, I just think Corey Sandhagen is going to break him down. He'll keep him at range for the first round. And the second round, he's going to start to open up a little more, maybe even mix up a takedown, because we have seen Corey Sandhagen start to wrestle a little bit more as of late. And then I believe in the 3rd or 4th round, he'll find some crazy finish, whether it's a spinning heel kick, whether it's flying knee, whether it's just a slick 1-2. I think he's going to find a pretty nice highlight reel knockout. I mean, Corey Sandhagen, like, he just styles on people. So I am going to be going with Corey Sandhagen by knockout in either the 3rd or 4th round. But like I said earlier on, like, if Rob Font comes with the right game plan, if it's his day, he really does his homework, maybe even mixes up the wrestling himself, he could get this done. So don't count out Rob Font, but the logical bet, if you're going to put your money on it, or if you just like to keep track of your predictions, 100% I would go with Corey Sandhagen, maybe by decision, but I think he'll find a finish in the 3rd or 4th round. That being said, let's see how I do on this card. It was a pretty hard card to predict, to be honest. There was some pretty close fights, but yeah, it's a card I'm definitely looking forward to watching. And yeah, I thank you guys so much for watching my video. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of these predictions, and if there's any videos you would like to see next. But yeah, thanks guys, and I'll see you in the next video.